Welcome to the Las Vegas Law Podcast. My name is Tony Sgro, and along with Darrell Harris, we'll be hosting today's podcast. We are very excited to have with us today my partner from our office and our team in Milan, Italy. And I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Stefano Sutti, who is the founding partner, or who's actually I think it was his grandfather, who was a knight in the Italian army, who founded this law firm about 75 years ago. It is an iconic law firm in Italy. And Stefano now heads the reins. I believe their firm is in 8 different countries. And they're just a very, very highly respected, very powerful law firm. And I was thrilled to death when we were able to make the deal some years ago, where we could start collaborating and working together. So, Stefano, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
The pleasure is entirely mine.
All right, and Stefano's English is better than my Italian, so we're gonna keep it.
No, not too, but okay.
So we're gonna keep this in English. So, Stefano, I thought it might be interesting, and as you know, I'm in Italy often, and I always try to learn and see where are the differences. How do things work in Italy versus how they work in the United States? And when we spoke a few days ago, you had mentioned some different things, even just some of the basics. What should travelers in Italy be careful about? How does someone get in trouble, and how does someone get out of trouble? How to avoid things? So maybe there's some differences there you can tell us about.
Of course, everything which may affect the position of a traveler from a legal point of view must be taken into account by considering that the continental legal system, the continental Europe legal system is very different, and this also concerns, for instance, the behavior one can expect from custom officers, from police officers, and it is much better to keep on the safe side because, of course, constitutional guarantees exist also in Italy, for instance, but one should never make assumption upon the fact that things are going to take place exactly as in the United States, or for the matter in the United Kingdom. For instance, let's say that you are blocked by police. They are not telling you that you are under arrest, but in practical terms, they are preventing you from going away. They're not giving you any kind, for instance, of Miranda warnings. And perhaps they are asking questions, and you must be very prudent on what you say, especially given that you are not a mother tongue. So it is really pointless to claim to understand the language when you don't. And it is much more prudent to claim that you don't understand the language, even if you do. So something which is very easy to obtain is consulate assistance, for instance, if one ever gets in trouble. And it is, I would say that it is mandatory to profit from one's right to have a mother tongue interpreter.
Yeah.
Way the interpreter also plays a double role potentially, because while he's an officer of the court in his role as an interpreter, he is also somebody who may serve as a witness as a later stage on what was actually said and what was actually done during your interrogation. So
Yeah, so you mentioned Miranda, and that's very interesting because your Miranda rights, that case in the United States comes from somebody whose last name was Miranda. And when that Yes, and when that person was stopped and interrogated by the police, the United States Supreme Court said, "Listen, if you're going to use something against somebody, what they say, you must say things like you have the right to remain silent. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Anything you say will be held against you." And we see that here in the United States all the time on TV and the movies, and we're so used to it. I think sometimes we might forget it's not that way in every country. So in Italy, a police officer doesn't have to say any of those things to you. Is that right?
yes, and the problem is that a suit policeman try to be ambiguous, that is asking questions as if you were a witness to something, but perhaps they trying to make you self-incriminate. And self-incrimination might happen even if you are perfectly innocent, out of a misunderstanding, for instance, so out of the fact that you did something being unaware that it was illegal in our jurisdiction. So this is a good advice, not so easy to follow in practical circumstances. But there again, one should play in full the fact that one is a foreigner, not speaking the language, not conversant with the local laws and with the local usage, and one is entitled to have an interpreter. One may be entitled to have a lawyer, but this means that you are already being investigated. And if you are interrogated as a possible perpetrator of something illegal, at that stage, a lawyer is appointed, yes, to represent you, but nothing prevents you from blabbing while the lawyer is not there yet, and you should absolutely avoid that. And I cannot stress, cannot emphasize enough that one should think thrice before making any kind of statement in such a circumstance. And let's say that you have a lawyer, and a lawyer, probably you don't have a lawyer on call if you are a traveler in our jurisdiction. And in that case, there is, say, lawyers which are called, which are appointed by the court and everything. But it is interesting to know that you cannot waive your right to a lawyer, something which would not be very wise anyway. But even if you have not instructed the lawyer yourself, at the end of the day, you will have to pay him or her anyway. So it is pointless to profit from the lawyers which is being offered to you and which you don't know, you don't have any real reason to rely upon, when it is going to cost you exactly as the lawyer of your choice.
What are the rules bringing things out of Italy? How do you stay safe when you cross the border? Like, what can I bring? What can I not bring? And what is customs going to be looking for?
It depends on the jurisdictions, of course, and within the Schengen area, we unless in the airports we do not have any real controls. But let's say that you're landing in Italy from the United States, you might be searched, and the custom officers would probably looking for drugs, weapons, and also cash. because cash is problematic by now. That is, there is an increasingly harsh legislation pushing towards a cashless society. And this means that you cannot land in Italy with a plane with a suitcase full of banknotes. This spells for serious troubles. Keep in mind that as is often the case everywhere in the world, a trial or even investigation is already a trouble per se. Even if you're at the end of the day, you are not breaching any law and you are going to be acquitted of any accusations of any proceedings which may be started against you. So one should be aware that any sum exceeding $10,000 in cash is a potential source of problem.
Yes.
One would be asked for probably the provenance of that money.
Right. So I was in Italy a few weeks ago, and when I left, I was going through the airport, and just to show the boarding pass and the passport to the agent there for the first time, and I've been going back and forth for, almost my whole life. And for the first time, the person at the security started asking me things like, how did you like Italy? What was your favorite part of Italy? What hotel did you stay at? How many days did you stay in the hotel? Did you buy anything while you were? In other words, all of a sudden, this female security officer just engaged me in this conversation, which I've never had that before. And I was wondering, Stefano, if you have heard that that is something now that the security people are doing in an effort to explore whether or not people are trying to do something that they should not be doing.
Or sometimes small talk is just a small talk, not something to be afraid of. But it is true, for instance, that by now there is some paranoia related to terrorism, for instance, but even just illegal immigration. And illegal immigration, what is quite paradoxical in Italy is that rather than fighting illegal immigration, Italy is making a more and more complicated and burdensome legal immigration. That is, even as a tourist, people may inquire about your whereabouts when in the jurisdiction, or make things difficult. For instance, sometimes we have American clients who wanted to have a working permit, a residence permit in Italy, because perhaps they have taken over an Italian company and they need somebody to manage it locally. And while if you are an actual terrorist or illegal immigrant, you can be cross the border by the Schengen area, or perhaps on a ship or something. If you wanted to be able to have a residence permit in Italy and to comply with all the regulations and support, it risks to be more complicated than should be required.
What is that? You've used Schengen area a couple of times. Can you explain to everyone what that means?
So what the Schengen area is, from a border point of view, similar to what exists in the United States from one state to another. That is, if one crosses from a given state to the border of a bordering state of another contiguous state, not much happens. You see a billboard perhaps, but you do not have any specific control because of that. The exception, of course, are the airport, because the airport, even domestic flights by now are heavily controlled, and anyway, international flights, even in the Schengen area, you must exhibit ID, and you must be everything should be checked, and people can ask questions and so forth.
So Stefano and I were speaking a few days ago, and we were talking about cash and the cashless system. For example, Sweden now is the first country to be completely cashless. And so Stefano and I were just going back and forth about some practical differences. And we were talking about, a year ago, 2 years ago, someone could have bought a building, literally a building, and delivered suitcases full of cash, and there would have been no issue with that. And now, Stefano, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand now there's a push in the Italian government to not allow any purchases over 10,000 euros starting next year. Is that right?
Yes, right now is 5,000 euros.
Oh, okay, wow.
So this is pretty low, and I realize that most of travelers by now rely on credit cards, or perhaps payment systems such as wire transfer on the fly through their phones or PayPal or something. But let's say that you are a legitimate businessman who has some cash with him because he wants, I don't know, to go to a nice restaurant or to a casino or whatever, and he has any kind of personal reason to be willing to bring some cash with him. And one issue is whether you are actually infringing any law, and so be sentenced to a fine or perhaps even imprisonment. But another entirely issue is whether you are facing practical problems. That is, let's say that at the border control, you are blocked 5 hours and you miss your appointment. And at the end of the day, they're not even going to apologize for that. But you still will have missed your appointment. So it is something which is best avoided, I would say.
Understood. So, is the rule right? Okay. The rule right now is $5,000 is the maximum. Is there
5,000 euros.
5,000 euros? My apologies. Is the rule going to change to 10,000 euros, or is it going to stay at five?
This is this is a pending proposal. That is, this is a ministerial decree. They need not pass a law. That is, there is such limit can be altered by an administrative order, and there is a proposal to raise it, probably exactly to for tourists. Because Italian, of course, is a touristic superpower, and we are interested in favoring and developing our business in this area. And there are people who are uneasy or unused. For instance, as we were discussing it the other day in Germany, things feel very different, meaning that there are many places where, say, restaurants do not accept credit cards, or perhaps even hotels are asking for you to pay cash, and so people are more used to bring cash with them. And say you are engaged in shopping, and perhaps the shop itself is happy not to pay the credit card commission and giving you a small reduction. And there is nothing illegal in that, but there is a limit which is pretty low, as we were saying before.
Now, does the restriction when you travel and you're going through customs, Does it include, I don't know, expensive jewelry, wedding rings, fancy watches, or is it just the cash that they're concerned about?
It is just the cash, actually, meaning that unless it is obvious that you are importing goods to resell them in our jurisdiction, in that case, it could be considered as a smuggling. But funnily enough, if you are coming with the jewels of the crown and you are actually going to sell them in the jurisdiction, but the context appears to just justify that such a jewelry is for your own personal use, nobody is going to raise any objection.
Understood. Now, am I allowed to buy in Italy if I use my credit card? Can I buy in Italy anything that I want, no matter how much money it is, and then bring it?
Yes. Absolutely. The only limit is those established by the credit card issuer.
So let's
A car, a helicopter, perhaps.
let's talk about some of the differences that exist in the court system. Okay, now, Stefano, you and I have talked about how different it is when someone goes to trial in Italy versus going to trial in the United States. So, if you have been accused of a crime and you say, you know what, I didn't commit any crime, I want a jury to decide whether or not I'm guilty because I'm innocent. I'm not taking any deals. In the United States, we would schedule a trial and we would start that trial on a particular day and we would select a jury. And those jurors are randomly selected based on driver's licenses, who pays a power bill, and things of that nature. 100 people might show up, 150 people might show up. From that amount of people that show up, we ask questions. Both sides ask questions, the prosecutor and the defense. And then we would whittle it down to who are the 12 jurors that are going to decide somebody's fate. The trial would begin, and we would go one day after the next for a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is, in order to get to the place where we get a verdict and someone is found guilty or not guilty. Now, I said that to Stefano, and he said, that is not how it works here in Italy. So,
No, not at all.
so why don't you tell us how it works there?
Let's start from the fact that we do not have a grand juries and we do not have jury trials either. In principle, what happens is that you are investigated by a prosecutor, which is called the Republic Attorney, and it is not a single individual. Of course, it is an office with a lot of deputies, and they are those who investigate you and then may ask the court to indict you so that you will be tried. In most circumstances, it is just a bench trial. It may even be a single judge. In some other cases, is a panel of 3 judges for more serious crimes. And the only things which is vaguely similar to a popular participation to the administration of justice is the so-called assize court, Corte d'Assise. In that case, there are 2 judges, which are career judges, plus 3 popular judges, but it is not, they are not sitting in a different role as the professional judges. That is, they are sitting all together, for instance, for mass murder or for some very very major crimes, and they participate in everything, in deciding upon evidence, in writing the reasoning of the judgment, and so forth. But this is very rare, and in principle, you are tried by a judge. And the judge does not issue a verdict, but the judgment where you are sentenced or acquitted, of course. And the interesting thing is that the public prosecutor is not a lawyer. He's a member of he's also a member of the magistratura, that is of the same order to which sitting judges belong. The very unhealthy thing is that they go back and forth from prosecution to the bench. And there is right now a constitutional reform in place in Italy, and a referendum will be held to decide whether this constitutional reform is affirmed or reversed, under which either you are a prosecutor or you are a judge.
Right. So,
otherwise, the position of the defense lawyer is very weak in respect to with respect to somebody who may put pressure on the court to find in their favor.
right. So if we were all judges, we would just take turns prosecuting people accused of a crime, and then we're going to be a judge in the next case. So we're prosecuting and judging, but we all know each other. We travel together. So it makes the job of the defense attorney almost impossible.
Exactly, yes. There is theoretically there should be mechanisms under which, for instance, the prosecutor paradoxically may even ask himself for the acquittal of the defendant, because they should not be understood as say as a private party seeking a kind of victory, but rather they should be acting in the interest of the law in an abstract sense. And another thing which is quite funny is that given that there is no prosecutorial discretion, meaning that every complaint or every police report should be investigated, and the prosecutor must ask for authorization to drop a case. Sometimes a trial is held where the prosecutor demands, requests the court to acquit the defendant. And the court may, judge may find the defendant guilty even if the prosecutor is asking for his acquittal.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's obviously much different than what we have here. So let me ask you this. If someone gets in trouble here in the United States for something that is serious, we have here what are called plea bargains, negotiations. We can make deals. And so someone who's accused of a crime can agree to plead guilty without a trial to something less serious. Is that something that is available in Italy?
Something similar has been introduced at the point in time, meaning that by now you cannot say agree upon the crime, but rather you can enter into a bargain as to your sentence. That is, you can, for instance, obtain that you may be fined rather than suffer an imprisonment or obtaining a shorter term. But the first, it is not the discretional the reduction that you can obtain. That is, there are the parameters which are compulsory, and the bargain should be approved by the court. And so sometimes you cannot, especially if you are innocent, of course, or if you have a good chances, it may not be a good policy in terms of damage control. You should perhaps take your chances and get your day in court and try for an acquittal. Also because the criminal judgment is final for the civil effects, meaning that if you have if your criminal case has been terminated by a plea bargain, you cannot defend yourself in a civil case, a subsequent civil case, claiming that you are innocent. That is, the amount to be paid as damages is still open to discussion, of course. But let's say that you have entered into a plea bargain agreement for, I don't know, manslaughter. The fact that you are liable for that as manslaughter is not open to discussion anymore in a subsequent civil case. So sometimes there are criminal cases which are very, how can I say, very trivial. For instance, patent infringement may involve a slack on your hands from a criminal point of view, but say million and million of euros in damages. So you are not going, say, to enter into a plea bargain agreement to avoid a small fine and then risk to be paid, to be liable to the payment of million of euros in damages in a subsequent criminal case.
Right. That is actually the same in the United States. If you plead guilty to anything in the United States, and there is a civil case or a civil component to that circumstance, then yes, you have no defense anymore to liability, and the trial only becomes as to how much money is owed. So, like you said, Stefano, even a slap on the wrist in the right kind of case can expose someone to millions of dollars in damages in a civil courtroom. So that is actually similar even here.
But I have a good news in this respect, meaning that something which does not happen in the United States, once you are acquitted in criminal court, you cannot be sued in civil proceedings anymore. That is no scenario such as the famous basketball player O.J. Simpson, where you are acquitted in a criminal court and then sued in a civil court, and you still risk to lose your case. No, you are acquitted in a criminal court, that's over.
So the cases out here are determined one versus another court because the burdens of proof are different, right? In a criminal courtroom, the prosecutor must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone did something. In a civil courtroom, it's just a preponderance of the evidence. 51-49. So that's why cases like the O.J. Simpson case are allowed to exist. But you're saying in Italy, you win the criminal case, it's over.
Yes. Also because the alleged victim of a crime can, this is another big difference and something perhaps which may sound weird to American ears. The alleged victim of a crime can raise his or her claim or its claim, if it is a corporation, in the framework of criminal proceeding themselves, be represented by counsel in the framework of criminal proceedings, and offer evidence there, and they is a kind of second prosecution. That is formally they're just asking for damages, but at the same time they are there to make sure that the liability is affirmed.
Yeah, that's also very different than what we have here. So
The faculty would say that our own criminal practice, probably 75% of the times, we are representing the alleged victims, normally corporate victims, which are claiming for damages and try to obtain them in the framework of criminal proceedings.
if someone wants to hire a lawyer in Italy, do they pay the lawyer a retainer, like a flat amount of money, or do they pay by the hour for the lawyer to assist them?
We used to have a public tariff system with a very detailed list of typical tasks performed by lawyers as support. And by now, all that has been abolished. So the lawyers' compensation is agreed by the parties. And there are no real limits upon upon the methods to calculate the to bill the clients. It is just a matter of agreement. There are two caveats here. There are two remarks. The first is that in Europe we have the rule lose pay, meaning that your legal fees are paid by the party losing the dispute. You are reimbursed, you are restored. It is part of the damages is the cost of the lawyer that you suffered to exert your right. But it is not the actual bills of the lawyer who are awarded to the winning party, but rather again the lawyer compensation, which are provided for by ministerial decrees, which again are applicable if the client and the lawyers have not reached any kind of agreement. For instance, in the case that the lawyer was appointed by the court, I mentioned before that you have to pay him or her anyway. But in that case, his bills will be determined by this kind of parameters of the public established parameters. And the losing party pays his own lawyer, of course, but has to pay the lawyer of the other party, but within the limit of those parameters.
So if I come to you and I say, Stefano, I need help. I have a case, a business case or a criminal case, and I say to you, how much is this going to cost? Then you can just tell me the price and the hour, and that kind of works like it does here in the US, right? If someone comes to me and needs help, I just tell them, what do I charge by the hour, or it's a flat fee, that sort of thing. I will tell you the difference in the United States. Attorney's fees coming back to the winning party at the end of the case, that is not automatic. And in fact, most of the time here in the United States, when people settle their differences, the first thing that it says is everyone's going to pay their own lawyer, right? Regardless of how the settlement went.
Yes, in settlements, this is also customary. This is customary also in Italy, especially if it is a real settlement that is not just a party surrendering because they have no chance. In that case, they may be exposed to the fact of paying even the lawyer's bill. But normally, in settlement, everybody pays his own lawyer. But this is also true in criminal cases, meaning that if you are acquitted, the Italian Republic does not foot the bill of your lawyer. And in civil and commercial and corporate disputes, on the contrary, it is good news that you are going to recovering a substantial chunk of your legal cost from the other party, provided, of course, that the other party is solvent. Only your private arrangement with your lawyer are not taken into consideration by the Italian court as they would be, on the contrary, in England. In England, they give you exactly what you pay the lawyer. While I can have with my client, I can have a flat fee arrangement, a contingency fee arrangement. I can be paid by the hours. I can be paid in accordance to those parameters. One thing which one must know about the parameters is that the parameters take heavily into account how much the matter is worth, meaning that if the matter is worth a lot of money, it is more favorable for the client to pay the lawyer on the basis of the billable hours worked by him. And if the matter is very small, probably if the lawyer accepts to do that, the client is much more interested in seeing those parameters applicable. Because the other tradition was that a lawyer was working for a wide range of clients, and big matters were paying for small matters.
So, Stefano, I can't thank you enough, and I think it's clear now to everyone why I feel very fortunate we were able to partner together several years ago. I thank you for your time, and sounds to me like most everyone watching this should have your contact information in their back pocket next time they come to Italy. How do we find you, Stefano?
www.sutti.com.
Thank you so much.
You, of course, you are in turn, you are my American partner, and anybody having any kind of problem or business opportunity in Italy should probably pass through his domestic lawyer, in that case, you.
Thank you so much. And you can find me at sgroandroger.com. I thank you for joining us today. And Stefano, next time we're together, we do have one case that's pretty interesting. The case of the missing Ferrari, which costs about $5 million, which no one knows where it is. But we'll talk about that next time we're together.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So bye-bye, and have a nice weekend.
You too.